then the infection is spreading. So through behavioral changes, we can bring the R value or the reproduction number to less than 1 and limit and eventually eliminate the infection or come close to doing that. So that's the second part. Third part is the segmenting and shielding. We know which part of which segment of our society is the most vulnerable, which is the nursing homes. So you protect those. Then the pharma evolution from dexamethasone to other things, even convalescent plasma. We can talk a little more about that.
Yeah.
So all those measures help mitigate. And then the possibility that we may have a successful vaccine, even though it's loaded with the political connotations.
Sure.
The probability of a successful vaccine by the end of the year or early into next year is looking very likely.
Mm-hmm. So that could be a pleasant October surprise. The president mentioned in his acceptance speech last night when he accepted the Republican nomination that, in fact, he indicated we may have more than one vaccine by the end of the year. Is that the way you see it?
Yes, that it's conceivable. But what we don't know is the efficacy of the virus and the vaccine and the safety of the vaccine. Those
Right.
are two very important denominators that need to be. They have to be. You know what I say is the virtuous intentions have to be anchored by solid science. Just because we want a vaccine, it's well-intended tool for treatment, it has to be vetted. And the vetting involves efficacy and safety. And those two things can't be rushed. Unfortunately, those are only time will resolve. And I think even with this expedited warp speed operation, aiming at January or February is an optimistic scenario, but achievable optimistic scenario.
Right, and you said that the efficacy and the period in which you determine if there's side effects, that's part of the process that the Russians skipped when they came up with their vaccine. Isn't that right? And then you told me that last week. Yeah.
Yes, and the same thing with the Chinese when they vaccinated the military.
That's interesting.
So you could call that an expanded phase 3 trial in which you accept the consequences without really going through the rigors of a trial.
Right. Okay. All right. Hey, let's talk about antigens and the plasma in this. When you talk about antigen testing, is this something now? Antigen testing, help me here. This is the test that determines if you've had the virus before, right?
No, antigen is for active infection.
Oh, that's for active infection. Okay.
Antibody is for the previous infection.
Okay. Now, for the antibody, would you, in a situation like we're in today, is it important to know should everybody be tested to determine if they've had the virus? And if they've had the virus, should they be giving convalescent plasma?
So what you're asking me, the retro-look test. The retro-look test is the antibody test, that if you had an infection. The problem with the antibody test is it's not good enough. And the low prevalence of positivity in the population lowers is positive predictability, meaning even if you have a positive test doesn't mean that you had the infection because the spread of infection was so low. So currently the recommendation for antibody testing does not exist. Only time you can aim to have an antibody testing that is materially useful to a given person is that they had the infection. They do the testing between 8 to 12 weeks because after 12 weeks it seems to dissipate anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me just go through the antigen testing and the convalescent plasma because they're kind of interlinked.
Please. Yeah.
So antigen testing is different than the regular testing we use based on PCR testing. PCR testing is the gold standard. It looks at the viral RNA, so the genetic material in the virus. The antigen testing looks at the proteins. in the virus. The PCR testing, the standard testing, has an ability to amplify the viral signal. So if there is a threshold at which it becomes positive or negative, but it brings the threshold lower by amplifying the signal. In antigen testing, that amplification doesn't exist, so it's less likely to be as sensitive. That was the problem with the antigen testing. Now, this new test that has been released yesterday, Abbott put in a lot of effort, and they have come up with a pretty simple test, like a pregnancy test, that they give you a card, which is coated with the reagent, and make a swab. And the swab is nasal swab. It's not nasopharyngeal. Nasopharyngeal is when it has to be really dug deep in your nose.
Yeah,
and
right.
Uncomfortable. So nasal is just in the front of the nose. And you do that and put rub it against the paper. If there's a one line, it's negative. If it's two lines, it's positive. So on surface, it has great implication that if you can diagnose people that simply, with few caveats. The caveat is they only tested on 102 people. So they're making millions, hundreds of millions of tests.
Ooh.
Tested basically on 102 patients. That too in positive patients. So when you test a test in a population that already you know that they have infection, it will be correct on the sensitivity side. In other words, you'll diagnose the patients who have the disease, but it could be wrong on the specificity side. In other words, the people who don't have the disease may also be diagnosed with the disease. So there will be some future iterations of the test that will attend to those deficiencies. But look at this scenario. If you're at an airport, you're boarding an airplane, and you're concerned about the circulated air and everything else. But if everybody, before boarding the plane, had the test done and everybody's negative, and the test is reliable and prompt, look at the confidence you have. And the same thing can be replicated at pretty much every place, in the restaurants, in doctor's offices, and hospitals. So if you have point of contact test that's rapid and reliable, and it's not only for diagnosis of disease, but screening of the disease, it will put COVID in the rear mirror pretty much instantaneously.
Wow.
But this test now is not for screening, it is for sickness. So this test is currently approved by FDA for people who have symptoms and within 7 days of the onset of symptoms. So this isn't a screening tool that what I would like, that the rest of the business community and the population would like. Hopefully they will enlarge it into a screening tool if it has a decent specificity rate with it.
Okay, it was not created as a screening tool, but you use that example to show how it could be used in an effective way, right?
That's right. So we have to have a test that's not only diagnostic, but also is a excellent screening tool. That's how we can open the economy. Give you an example. In University of Arizona, I just read today, they are doing wastewater testing or the sewage testing. So they have 5,000 kids there. In one of the dorms that has 311 kids, the sewage testing showed that there was infection. And then they went back and tested all 311, and 2 of them were positive, and 309 were negative. So they took those 2 and quarantined them. And that's the beauty of proactive testing using pooled testing techniques that you can contain the spread of the infection. That's the wastewater testing and the sewage testing has also been used for other viruses and even for illicit drug usage. But I thought it was such a good feeling that in a proactive manner you can preempt a larger conflagration of the virus.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That would be good news. All right. It's 2:26, man. We've run out of time, man. That was fast. It goes fast when you're learning a lot. Dr. Bomby, thank you again for coming to us on behalf of Centric Health and the work you do in this community and the work you do for this audience to help us understand this thing. And one thing about this story for me, it is always changing. It is always moving, and you're always learning something every week. I wouldn't be able to do that without you. So thank you, Dr. Bridge Bomby, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Stay safe.
Okay. Well, have a good weekend, sir. Thank you.